keys not to lose it again. There we go. We'll just beach this guy. Keep your profile low so you don't scare it. And just try to get it out of there. Okie dokie. Cool. There you go. That's not a bad one, eh? Yeah, it's about... Here's number 2. I think 2's enough for the evening. There's a nice color to it too. Nice rainbow. We'll walk it right up at the beach, up on the beach. No need for a net if you got a beach. So, number 2. So, 2 nice trout. These are good sized trout. Yeah. Take these home and cook them up. Put them on the grill or who knows what. Put them in a smoker. Get it. Oh, we got some mushrooms here. We'll go pick some of those up too. Maybe trout and mushroom. We got a bunch of orange delicious I see out here. What they call it. Go. Probably about 13 and a, I don't know, 15. 15 on the other one. So say a 14 and a 15-inch. Rainbow right there. Pretty nice. You know, let's go. So what in the world is happening in the world? I mean, is it because people just don't want to see what's happening? Is because people are putting their heads in the sand? Why is it that people are going on with their lives as though the gravy train is going to just keep on coming? Right? Why is it that people are are going off and spending money and just living off of credit. And you've got Russia turning off the gas to Germany. And do people think that this is going to end well? It's just mind-blowing. I mean, I hope you people are getting ready. I hope to God you're getting ready, because I've said this before. You know, initially I thought it was just going to be like a recession. It was just going to be a depression, an economic depression. But we're now getting into the point that the recovery for something as drastic as what's occurring in Germany and Europe. I mean, remember, Trump said that Germany would be beholden to Russia for fuel and basically having to be under their thumb in order.
Germany will become totally dependent on Russian energy if it does not immediately change course. Here in the Western Hemisphere, we are committed to maintaining our independence from the encroachment of expansionist foreign powers. It has been the formal policy of our country since President Monroe
to get heating, and this was at the UN. This is when he was president. This is what, 3 years ago. So now it's all coming to fruition. This is all happening right now. Russia's turned off the power, and what's going to happen in the States? I'm telling you, I feel really good that for the last 5 years, I've basically been heating my home with wood. As a matter of fact, it's moose season right now. That's why I've got my Ruger Safari, or it's the African actually, in a 375 Ruger, and I carry it in the truck now because it's moose season. And if I find myself in an opportunity where I'm on public land, I'm taking that moose and I'm putting it in my truck, and I'm taking it home and I'm hanging it, and I'm going to age it, and I'm going to put it in the freezer. And that's called food security. It's amazing that people are looking at Costco and thinking because there's food in Costco, like there's beef and steak and all that kind of stuff, that's going to be the situation this fall when farmers and ranchers have not been coming near to what they produced last year. So you're seeing issues with the power company, the power and gas and electric, Pacific Gas and Electric in California. I mean, I've got family still in California, which is crazy, but they don't want to leave. So that's what we used to say when I was a kid in Vietnam, c'est la vie. We're getting into that point. It's going to be pretty harsh. So I hope you're getting ready, because this winter, something's going to happen within the next 3 to 5 months. 3 to 5 months is going to be a major event. It could be in Europe, and I think it's going to be starting in Europe, but it's going to go around the world, because this is what's happened with everything. All this globalism, this corporate globalism, has removed a nationalistic buffer that used to be there. So let's take World War II and the Great Depression. Remember, in the 1920s, Germany was in a major depression, which led to the Nazis, the German Socialist Workers' Party, the socialists taking over Germany. And then that led to World War II. And then, remember, in the 1920s, the US was doing really well. But in the 1930s, the UK, the
United States was doing poorly in what we call the Great Depression, right? Well, what you've got going is a situation where, and so there was that nationalistic buffer. So like there was enough of a difference between Germany and the UK and the United States, that separation that created a buffer back and forth. We don't have that now. This globalism that's enabled people to produce something in one nation and have it sold, purchased in another country, and did great for corporate globalism, is actually what's going to lead to a major downfall globally, because what happens in one part of the world almost immediately affects another part of the world. That didn't happen before when you had various countries who were very nationalistic. But now, because of all the programming and the media programming, which, by the way, that's actually one of the major reasons we're having issues with people either keeping their head in the sand or not even knowing what's happening in the world, is because our corporate media, their sole objective right now is to keep Wall Street inflated and they're propping up Wall Street. Every time you get a dip, people start to realize what's happened, and the price of gold starts to rise. You've got this playing back and forth. Well, they can only do that up to a point. Then it gets to a point where the actual market will take over. And when that market takes over and people really realize what's been happening, you're going to have a major run on the banks. You're already having major runs on the banks. You had a major run in Sri Lanka, the former Ceylon. You had the bank run in China, and China just had this earthquake where all these people were killed. All this stuff is going to be playing together. So think about supply. I just went to go and try and get a couple water tubs that I was going to turn into a septic tank system for my new handcrafted log home. Well, guess what? I asked them and said, hey, are you still selling them? And they said, no, we don't sell them anymore because we've got to refill them with DEF, and we no longer get rid of them at the points at the site where they empty them. So now they just put them back on a ship. So it's actually more efficient for them to actually ship them back and have them refilled with DEF, and then have that to transport the DEF back so it can be used with the diesel, right? Than it used to be, where that was one of the best places. All you had to do was clean out the residual DEF, and then you had a great price on a tank, a 265-gallon tank. That's not happening. So supply issues are definitely starting to really be felt. And that's one of the reasons we've been purchasing specific types of equipment, like chains for chainsaws, wood mill. If you've got wood around you and you have a homestead and you don't have a sawmill, you might want to get a sawmill. Even something as rudimentary as an Alaska mill. I highly recommend the Alaska mill. I've had an Alaska mill for 10 years. Works fantastic. I'm going to start showing more of that work over on my other channel, 5 Acres and a Moose. If you haven't checked out my 5 Acres and a Moose, that's my other channel that's really specifically about homesteading. This channel, Cork's Critical Thinking Corner, is just about getting you to look at what's happening in the world, check out some of my books, and check out what's really happening in terms of global events that are going to be affecting you personally. That's the thing, deciphering what affects you personally and what stuff that's just distraction. All this transgender stuff and all this looking about that they've been trying to do bread and circuses on you, getting to distract you. Think about all that. If they're trying to distract you from what's really happening, which is food supply issues, fuel supply, and that's not the thing of producing it, it's just getting it to you. In Europe right now, what's happening is they're just not going to get the fuel because Russia's turning it off, and because they became so reliant on this globalist attitude that they had. Think about all the socialists in Germany and France and people like Macron and Merkel before. they all set up Europe to be subordinate to Russia. And now they're getting ready to pay the price. And Russia and China have learned how to play the field. I'm always looking out here in the fireweed, see if there's any moose along here. Especially if I'm near public land and I can just pull over and grab my rifle and shop. Go to the supermarket. But anyway, I'm going to be doing a full episode again, but this is just a quick spot just to reach out, show you a little fishing. I went and caught a couple, those were a couple rainbows that you just saw. I picked them up on the way. I did my little supermarket run, my country mouse supermarket run. So I implore you, read up, go check out zerohedge.com, go check out greatgameindia.com. These are actually news channels, portals that used to actually report news, that are reporting news in the manner that it used to be reported, which is you could at least be informed and get an idea what's really happening in the world. As compared to right now, what they're doing is 100%, they're just propaganda, trying to keep you ignorant and emotionally stirred, hence distracted, so that you don't see what's really happening. The reason they're doing it is the same exact purpose the Chinese did when they told all the people to go into their homes and they did a lockdown. And the reason you do a lockdown in a place like China and during the COVID scare was so that you could have people just go into their homes, be compliant, and then basically starve to death or die of dehydration because you couldn't get water. Because remember, a lot of those apartments and studios, they weren't getting their water because nobody was running the plants providing those services. People were starving and they actually had to have people with trucks coming in. Remember where your food comes from. It comes from the country. And if you're not in the country right now, you know, my friend Michael Yon, he just did an interview that I was watching last night on Man in America, and it was pretty good. He was talking about how famines occur and how farms, it doesn't matter if you're on a farm, but what does matter is if you live in the country. I live in the country and I have a homestead, which means that I do farming, but it's not what the land is all about. Living in the country and having plots to grow food is a lot different than having a full-scale farm where you can be manipulated and forced to turn in all your goods to the government, as they did in Ukraine, and they did in China, and they did in Cambodia. You know, even in Vietnam, when I was in prison in Vietnam in 1983, well, that was just after the Red River famine in Vietnam. And that's a whole story. I'll talk about that in the future, because that's something to learn about what happens when the power elite and the totalitarians and the communists, who have and idiot communists, because they're a bunch of idiots. That's why they're communists. And they're freaking the lowest rung on the ladder when it comes to intelligence, because they're the people who set up communism and think that communism and socialism is so great, not understanding that the only reason that communism and socialism survive is because of capitalism, until they basically kill the golden goose, which is what's happened in every nation, where they went through all the wealth that was created through capitalism, especially real free market capitalism, which we haven't had in this country since probably about the 1920s, 1910s, because then it became corporate capitalism, which is a nepotism, where it's basically not what you know and what you bring to the table, but who you know and who you can convince to, you know, I scratch your back and you scratch my back, and we are all happy together, until we realize that we're letting a lot of people into power who have no idea about what they're doing. And that's why we've got the situation here with us being reliant on other countries for our fuel, taking our reserves and shipping them off, and that's criminal in itself. But get ready. There's some crazy stuff coming out in the next 3 months. And hopefully you won't be hiding in your apartment, told by the government that, don't worry, we'll take care of it for you. Yeah, remember what Reagan says, one of the scariest words to the scariest phrase to hear, if I paraphrase, is, we're from the government, we're here to help. Good luck.